What were some of the aspects of the drama that diverted from the real case that you thought really would translate well?
I honestly didn't think that we diverted very much off of the story. Something that I've been talking about quite a bit is the fact that when this came to me originally 3 years ago next week, which is astounding, I can't even believe it. I don't want to undermine whatever I brought to the table, and I definitely don't want to undermine whatever our writers' room brought to the table. But this was such a ready-baked story. It was so compelling from the start, from the jump for a writer, to have a villain, quote unquote, like Christopher Duntsch, who in my opinion is unlike most villains that inhabit the true crime space. The complexity of him at times, the tragedy to him. It would be very easy and for people to just plop the black hat on him and call it a day and sleep well at night thinking that he was an aberration. But the fact that he was as complex of a character as he was a real draw for me. And then our heroes, and Henderson, Kirby, and then eventually Michelle Shugart, also were completely unusual heroes. The idea that you've got two surgeons taking down one of their own is in and of itself a compelling jumping off point for characters. They don't have guns attached to their hips, right? They don't have a badge to be able to hide behind. They were trying to figure out how someone like Christopher Duntsch exists in the same manner that I hope our audiences at home are wondering throughout the course of the series as a whole. So I'd like to say that this was a hard one to wrap my brain around, but this was just a complete gift to be able to have this story presented to me and allow me to be able to explore it with our writers.
And the podcast, for the most part, told the story in this linear fashion. What went behind the choice of playing around with time during the drama series?
One of them was just pure mechanics, right? If we had told this story linearly, then Alec Baldwin and Christian Slater and Michelle Shugart wouldn't show up until episode 5 and 6, right? So there was an aspect of it, which is that I've got these two amazing characters that I want to dive into right from the jump. And if I told it linearly, I wouldn't be able to do that. The second piece was just from a pure storytelling perspective, which I love telling stories that are out of time. I love the idea of planting things early on in a season that don't pay off until later in a season. So one of my favorite episodes of the series is episode 7, where our two timelines finally converge and you begin to see the things that you heard about in prior episodes. I find it just as an audience member, I really find that to be compelling. And what I've always wanted to do in anything that I write is I would like to encourage viewers to have to watch something more than once to be able to get the full picture of what the storytelling was. And so this is one of those instances where I think if audiences take the time to go back and rewatch it, they're going to see things differently than they did the first time. And I find that to be just fun storytelling.
You talked about, the investigation kind of hinging on those three characters. And it was another aspect of the drama I found interesting. Even when the cop or the law enforcement is interrogating him, their face isn't really shown. Was that a conscious choice?
Absolutely. There were a couple of times that we played with that, and I'm so grateful that you picked up on that. But as it relates to the law enforcement, I did want to have them sort of fall into the background so that we knew that our heroes were our heroes, right? That you picked up on beautifully. And yes, it was conscious. The second time that we do it is actually when Jerry Summers wakes up from his surgery, and we never see the faces of the nurses and we never see the faces of the other doctors. And that was meant to fuel that feeling of unease and terror about these people that Jerry Summers had no idea who they were or why they were, and all he wanted was his friend Christopher Duntsch to show up. So that trying to infuse those episodes with that feeling of unease was definitely a conscious choice, and our directors took that thought and just ran with it and killed it, and I'm so proud of them and everything that they did. So
we talked about how it was so close to the true case. In terms of the medical side of things, did your team have a person on staff just to make sure maybe those surgery scenes or the writing was as accurate as it could be?
100%. And in fact, our medical advisor, our surgical advisor, is a practicing neurosurgeon in New Jersey. And he, when he and I first met, I had said to him that what I want to get out of this show is that I want 2% of the viewers, the neurosurgeons, the vascular surgeons, the operating room nurses, right, to watch the show and say, we got it right. And even if 98% of viewers wouldn't have a clue, right, I desperately wanted people to be able to look back, those professionals, and say, that's one of the first shows on TV that actually got it right, that got the feeling of an operating room right, that got the mechanics of an operating room right. And so, yeah, we went to painstaking details trying to make sure that we nailed that.